When the world ends, it won't be like the movies. There's no heroic montage. Just silence, confusion, and the hard truth no one wants to say out loud. Most preppers won't make it past the first 30 days. Not because they didn't store enough food, but because survival is a lot more psychological and a lot more human than anyone wants to admit. They've trained for the disaster, but not for the silence that follows. The first week is a blur of adrenaline. You feel in control, you have your supplies, your plan, you tell yourself, I'm ready. But then, day 3 hits. The grid is still down. The quiet isn't peaceful anymore. It's heavy. No news, no updates, no reassurance that help is coming. That's when fear starts whispering. What if this doesn't end? It's not the lack of power that breaks people, it's the lack of certainty. Psychologically, this is the acute emotional response stage of isolation.
Within weeks, that isolation starts to rewire the brain. Anxiety spikes, sleep gets shorter, the same fierce independence that made you confident now makes you crumble fastest when you realize you are completely, utterly alone. Survival isn't just about living without people, it's about living without purpose. History is clear on this point. No one survives alone for long. The people who make it are the ones who can adapt and build small, functional tribes. Studies from disasters like the Kobe earthquake in Japan show that neighborhoods with strong social ties, what researchers call social capital, recovered far more swiftly. But in a crisis, trust becomes the most dangerous currency. Do you share your food? Do you let a stranger into your shelter? What if they're desperate or worse, armed? Survival forces impossible ethical decisions that most people have never practiced. And that's where morality begins to rot. It takes leadership to foster cohesion, to build trust when there's every reason not to. But effective leaders are rare. And eventually, your biggest threat isn't the disaster. It's the other people still alive in it.
This leads to the final uncomfortable truth. The supply illusion. Most stockpiles aren't built for endurance. They're built for comfort. They create a false sense of control. But control is temporary. What happens when the generator's gas runs out? When the water filter breaks? When you realize all you've done is prepare to consume? Real survival, the kind that lasts past day 30, isn't about what you've stored. It's about how well you can adapt when everything you stored is gone. It's about developing skills to create resources, not just use them. The people who make it are the ones who know how to problem solve, to innovate, to build. They understand that balancing a personal kit with community engagement is the only viable path. Because in the end, the ultimate survival tool isn't a knife or a fire starter. It's a resilient mind and a trusted neighbor.
When we picture survival, we picture gear, water filters, fire starters, fortified shelters. We think about skills. But there's a critical element most people preparing for the worst completely overlook: empathy. In a crisis, the instinct is to harden yourself, to view compassion as a liability and cruelty as a shield. You build walls, you shut people out because it feels safer. But that's a profound mistake. Empathy isn't just some soft, sentimental feeling. It's a core survival tool. It's the very thing that keeps us sane when the world goes sideways. When you help someone, when you share the little you have, you're not just keeping them going, you're reminding yourself of your own purpose. You stay anchored to your humanity. Without that connection, survival becomes a cold, mechanical checklist. And when life is stripped of its meaning, the will to survive simply evaporates. This is why some of the most hardened, gear-obsessed preppers are often the first to break.
Because while empathy can foster powerful social bonds crucial for group success, it's also a double-edged sword. Unchecked, it can lead to crippling emotional exhaustion. Psychologists call it compassion fatigue, a state where you absorb so much of others' trauma that your own judgment becomes clouded and your own health deteriorates. The key isn't to shut empathy off, but to balance it with emotional regulation, to set boundaries, to practice self-care even when it feels selfish. It's about understanding the difference between feeling for someone and becoming consumed by them. Because all the tactical gear in the world can keep your body alive, but it's your humanity that will keep you living. That distinction becomes razor sharp around day 30. This is what survival experts call the wall. By this point, supplies are running low. The initial adrenaline has faded, replaced with a deep, bone-wearying exhaustion. Hope feels like a distant luxury. And this is when the final, most important filter kicks in, your why. What is your reason for pushing through? If your why was simply fear of the end, you'll give up when the end becomes your new reality. If it was ego, the desire to prove you could outlast everyone else, you'll snap under the immense humbling pressure. But if your why is something larger than yourself, protecting your family, holding on to your faith, the dream of rebuilding, that is the fuel that gets you over the wall.
Psychologist and Holocaust survivor Viktor Frankl observed this in the concentration camps. He saw that the prisoners who found a purpose, a reason to endure, were the ones most likely to survive unimaginable hardship. This reveals the fundamental truth of endurance, the real difference between simply prepping for a disaster and actually surviving one. Because when everything truly collapses, survival doesn't belong to the person with the most canned goods or the sharpest knife. It belongs to the most resilient. And that resilience is forged in purpose and community. So yes, most people won't make it past that 30-day wall, but not because they weren't ready for the end of the world. It's because they weren't ready for the end of normal, the end of routine, of predictability, of the simple comforts we take for granted. Survival isn't about collecting enough supplies to live forever. It's about developing the internal fortitude to start over again and again long after those supplies are gone. In the end, what truly terrifies us isn't the world falling apart. It's the sudden, stark realization of how fragile we were all along.